Complex Verbal Operants by Kara Lucas. Skinner defined verbal behavior as behavior that is reinforced through mediation of another person's behavior, whereas nonverbal behavior is reinforced directly through contact with the physical environment. He was concerned with verbal behavior of the individual speaker rather than with the verbal practices of the verbal community. As a mean to explain language, Skinner developed verbal behavior to have concepts that were derived from his laboratories and applied to the language that we use. His terms that he developed have become part of the technical terminology used in the field of behavior analysis. Operant is another term for response. Therefore, think of a verbal response. Skinner has composed many verbal operants. We're going to review some elementary verbal operants. These verbal operants are considered to be more basic in the field. So let's quiz ourselves with the following videos.
Whose little ball of paper is this?
Oh, that would be mine. See, I wrote a note to myself.
Monica is using a mand. In particular, she is manding for information regarding her environment. Skinner's formal definition of a mand is a verbal operant in which the response is reinforced by a characteristic consequence and is therefore under the functional control of relevant conditions of deprivation or aversive stimulation. Here is the next video for you to decipher which verbal operant is present.
David. David. Yes. I'm in Scotland.
Good kid. Good.
Yes, thank you. How are you?
I know you.
All right, good.
Oh, right. Good.
Right.
Right.
No, you don't want to go out. It's windy, is it?
Ricky.
If you guessed echoic, you were correct. Here the little girl is engaging in echoic behaviors. An echoic response is defined as a vocal response or subvocal that is formally similar to a prior vocal stimulus presented.
Oh, looks like she didn't leave in such a hurry after all.
Oh, I think this is the episode of Three's Company where there's some kind of misunderstanding.
If you chose attacked, you are correct. Chandler is tacting the present stimulus or the TV episode that he sees. Attacked is defined as a verbal operant in which a response of a given form is evoked, or at least strengthened, by a particular object or event or property of an object or event. This is according to Skinner. That definition is from Verbal Behavior in 1957. To help with clarification, layman's terms is always useful. Attacked is a verbal operant in which you label a stimulus that is present in your environment.
Huh. What's doofus spelled backwards?
Here, Monica is engaging in an intraverbal, which is a verbal response occasioned by prior verbal stimulus that lacks point-to-point correspondence with that stimulus. Let's move on to the last one.
Does Gerard Butler have a massive student loan or something? Is that why he does all these films?
Here, Jimmy Kimmel's popular segments of reading mean tweets shows participants, mainly celebrities, engaging in textual behavior, which is similar to echoic behavior, but the antecedent stimulus is a visual rather than an auditory. It is commonly presented using text as seen in the clip. Each verbal operant contains a controlling variable and a consequence. Echoic, imitation, copying a text all have verbal stimulus with point-to-point correspondence and formal similarity. The consequence is non-specific reinforcement. Mands have a controlling variable of establishing operations, such as motivation by deprivation or aversive stimulation, and it is followed by the consequence of specific reinforcement. Intraverbals have a verbal stimulus without point-to-point correspondence or formal similarity, and the consequence is non-specific reinforcement. Text or transcriptive responses have a verbal stimulus with point-to-point correspondence but without formal similarity, and the consequence is non-specific reinforcement. Nonverbal behavior, also known as receptive language, has the controlling variable of a verbal stimulus, and following the response is a nonspecific reinforcement. Moving from basic verbal operants, we need to examine and understand more complex verbal operants. To start, advanced verbal relations involve multiple sources of control. Variables controlling verbal behavior almost never occur alone. Therefore, there are multiple sources of control. Verbal operants are under control of an audience, motivational variables, and the context. In addition, verbal operants can be subjected to intraverbal control or echoic control by preceding verbal behavior. The fact that stimulus control is additive means that there are profound implementations in understanding verbal behavior. Additive control is when a single response that has multiple stimuli that are presented as the antecedent. Try to refer back to the reading about Skinner's proposal to have someone say the word pencil. Skinner proposed there were many possible stimuli manipulations that could be employed in order to help strengthen a person's demand for a pencil. For example, you can have no pencil near or in sight, then place some paper in front of the person and state that they will earn $20 for drawing a cat. There is a motivational factor, which is the reward of $20, as well as the intraverbal control of what goes with paper. And there is control of the audience, or the speaker who stated to draw the pencil. The single response that is likely to be evoked is demand for a pencil. The various types of multiple control are proposed by Michael Palmer and Sundberg in 2011. There is the convergent multiple control, which is where one variable strengthens a response of a single topography. For example, if a child goes into the kitchen and sees a package of cookies on the table, the response will be to ask for a cookie. The verbal operant of a man, in this case, was under the control of deprivation and partially under the control of the visual stimulus of seeing the cookies. Another proposed type of multiple control is the divergent multiple control, which is one variable that strengthens more than one response. For example, if you see a small brown chihuahua, a number of nonverbal responses might be evoked that you are thinking of. For example, dog, brown, small, Mexico, yo quiero Taco Bell. Try to think of some examples of convergent multiple control and divergent multiple control for the written discussion piece for this specific presentation. Sundberg states that suggested research on multiple control can be in the area of analysis of a comedian's repertoire of behaviors. Let's watch a clip of Kevin Hart's stand-up performance, and let's analyze the various variables that control his comic behaviors.
Gotta know who to fight and who not to fight, man. I would love to be a thug. I swear I wish I could be a thug. I don't have it in me. Like, I don't have those thug qualities in me. I was actually talking to this thug dude. I was in D.C. not too long ago, right? And I talked to this guy. We might have talked for about 15 minutes. I swear to you, I don't know what we were talking about. But he was so passionate about the stuff that he was saying. That's the only reason why I stayed there to listen. This is exactly what he said. It's not even a joke. This is exactly how he's talking to me. He's like, you know what I mean? I'm talking to the dude, right, man? And we talking. He talking about whoop, 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 whoop. Right? Right? So I'm like, right? You know what I mean? They come at me, I'm like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. They get that, you know what I'm saying? Flip that, press that, everybody get money, burger, you know what I'm saying? I'm talking shit, you know what I mean? Talking dip, Lord, dip niggas, you know what I mean? Talking to me, right? Right? They talking to me, you know what I'm saying? He came back, I was like, I looked up, he was dead. I said, whoa, what? Wait a second. Back up, back home. Well, who killed him? Whoop, whoop, what? I was so confused. I thought I was a witness. I said, did I see this? Was I there? I don't want to be a part of it, is what I'm saying. I must have been so afraid in my life, man.
This short scene shows the multiple interacting sources of control. 1. The audience is a source of control. Notice that Kevin Hart's quick, rambling behaviors increased when the audience began laughing. The audience laughter seems to strengthen and increase the number of silly or fast-paced sentences in which Kevin exhibits. Initially, before he was rambling and making funny noises, the audience was relatively quiet. Therefore, there is possibly a deprivation of audience engagement during that moment, which acted as a motivational variable for Kevin to exhort these funny sounds. Or could his babbling impressions function as an escape from the audience's aversive, quiet behavior? There is also an interverbal relationship between the formal similarities that he, quote, makes up a thug. Please feel free to post in the discussion portion of this presentation the various sources of control you found in this video that I may have missed. Interestingly enough, even though Sundberg has a whole article titled 301 Research Topics for Skinner's Verbal Behavior, and in there he suggests researching a comedian's repertoire as a proposed idea. However, I could not find any related to comedy behaviors specifically. Sundberg states that multiple sources of control are not obvious, but that the entertainment community uses multiple control in areas such as song, poems, literature, movie dialogues, etc. A great discussion piece for this presentation could incorporate some examples and references to your favorite entertainment pieces, so feel free to share. Multiple control plays an important role in complex behaviors like problem solving. Problem solving is defined by Michael Palmer and Sundberg as people learn to manipulate controlling variables to successfully strengthen a target response. Look at example A. What is your phone number? I'm sure you can say it out loud right now. If you can, then clearly the target response is evoked by the specific state of the question. There is no problem solving involved here. Look at example B. What is the next largest prime number after 23? Can you make an educated guess that it's 29? This targeted response is not one simple discriminated operand under control of the question. Instead, it is under multiple control of the question. Prime number is defined as a whole number greater than 1, whose only two whole number factors are 1 and itself. You have to refer back to what prime number even really means. Then you were probably thinking of a few controlling variables that involve solving this problem, which might include thinking of what comes after 23. You start thinking about 25 and realize that that's not the next prime number. 26, 27, 28, all of these numbers come after 23. You exhibited a systematic manipulation of variables to get your targeted response. Problem-solving skills involve complex verbal operands that are under the control of many variables. Skinner's complex verbal operands has many conceptualized literature surrounding various topics, but there is a low number of empirical citations relating to Skinner's complex verbal operands. One explanation for this is because Skinner's account on explaining complex verbal behavior has deficiencies. Many authors have argued that verbal behavior being defined by the listener trained to do so is too broad. As seen in the graph showed by Simon Diamond and al. In 2006, empirical findings regarding Skinner's verbal behavior is the lowest line. Lack of empirical support for Skinner's verbal behavior and authors arguing that Skinner's verbal behavior definition is too broad has led to other interpretations of complex verbal behavior and operands. Relational frame theorists such as Hayes, Barnes-Holmes, Rache have suggested a remote but experimentally accessible environmental source of previously unexplained generative verbal functions. Relational frame theorists suggest that the source of verbal behavior comes from multi-exemplar experiences. In other words, derived relational responses based on our past histories of learning. They have developed conceptual and applied implications that have uncovered opportunities to perhaps teach children faster. Think of the example of spelling words vocally. This is an intraverbal response, which is a different repertoire from writing, which is a dictation response. These start as independent repertoires initially. However, teaching a subset of these two responses using an alternating multiple exemplar fashion resulted in students producing untaught responses to novel words without instruction. Gear and colleagues in 2003 presented an empirically based literature overviewing the complex verbal operants and multiple exemplar training. The dependent variable consisted of untaught spelling responses in both written and spoken forms. Each student was assigned three sets of 5 words. The students were unable to spell any of the words in either function prior to the experiment during the baseline phase. Students were given either the command to write the word or vocally spell the word using letters. During multiple exemplar instruction, the students were taught both written and spoken responses for set 2 words, as you can see in the chart. They used an alternating fashion until each topography met a criterion of 90% or better for 2 consecutive sessions. Alternating fashions consisted of having the students spell in written topographies and then in spoken topographies. The student was taught to spell in one topography, then the other. Post multiple exemplar instruction of set 3 words consisted of teaching the children to only spell the words using one topography with 90% accuracy. During the testing phase on the set 3 words, all participants were able to accurately emit the untaught response form. They derived upon the behavior without formally being taught. The effects shows of multiple exemplar training are an extension of the formation of other generative verbal behavior contributed by Skinner. This is a field of complex verbal behavior that will enhance significantly being able to implement empirical studies such as this one showed by Gear and colleagues. Skinner's complex verbal operants covers multiple control and shows us that variables that control verbal operants never act alone. While Sundberg stated that 301 topics of research are possible through Skinner's verbal behavior, there is still a low number of empirical literature relating to Skinner's complex verbal behavior. With proposed flaws in Skinner's outlook on verbal behavior, relational frame theory has emerged and is exposing Skinner's complex verbal operants in a newer way, which is leading to more empirical-based literature. The end.